Kiki. I'm a mother of 4, and I guess you'd call me a life coach, but you know, aren't we all just navigating this as best we can? Moving through the motions. So, here's what to do with your kids when nothing, and I mean nothing, is working. Now, this kind of situation I'm talking about may be more of the smaller in the moment things, but it definitely still applies to big things that you're trying to fix with your kids. And that, you know, that can range from like infants learning to sleep, or you learning to breastfeed, or kids learning to read, or whatever. So my top tip for when it feels like nothing is working, you're like at the end of your absolute tether and you don't know you've like, feel like you've Googled all the answers. But let me tell you, fuck Googling all the answers. Will this get me banned on YouTube? I don't know. Who knows? But guess what I'm saying is like, there is no answer to parenting found on the internet. No. Like, yes, you can find things that you feel called to, and you're looking for things to sing at you. So if something feels like a really good calling, like a book or a person or whatever, like follow that vibe for a while. Don't be dogmatic about it, but follow the vibe. Anyway, back. What is my number one tip for when nothing is working? Stop trying. Stop trying. I don't know. Is that like counterproductive? I don't know. Stop trying and stop looking. When sleep, let's say sleep is super bad. I worked as a sleep coach for like 10 years. I just can't take myself back there. When sleep is really bad, I find, and this is the part that I couldn't work with parents when I was doing coaching for children and sleep, is like the more the parent or the mother hyper focused on the sleep, the shitter it got. I'm telling you, I had some doozy hyper focuses of, and like hyper perfection expectations as well. So if you're experiencing, so kids, babies, people, supermarket like checkouts, they all know exactly, like, you know what your husband's thinking when he's standing in front of you. You know what like people you're engaging with are thinking and feeling and behaving as you're with them. And so when you're like trying to fix something of your kids, they know, like I've seen it in my infants. They so deeply know when you are hyper fixated on fixing something, and it doesn't get fixed from hyper fixation. You know, I'm going to like sway to the different ways, and it's sometimes why like the early interventions are not working as well as we had hoped, because that hyperfixation from an external source that isn't a loving source, not to say that those people don't like love your kids, but it's still not you. It's just not as effective. And so really the only effectiveness is when the mother is able to flow them in with her life. So when you're trying to change something and you hyperfixate on it, it doesn't flow. Like you're not even really asking the universe to support you. You're kind of saying, I'm going to buck up against you every single time. You know, part of the sleeping stuff I was doing was that like people would be, I feel like I'm speaking at 10x. Slow down. I would be teaching people to put their kids to bed at 7, and I had to do it in this specific way because I was working for someone else. But I don't really believe in that anymore. Like it worked for me for like a couple of years, but I would not like fixate on that specific bedtime anymore, because that doesn't support my lifestyle. That's not how I operate. That's not what's important to me. And so I feel you know, let's say you do have a kid who's not sleeping well at whatever age, there are so many things outside of the sleeping that you can focus on that will help the sleeping, right? So if you just keep going on and on and on and on and on about the sleeping, it all just stays the same. Like, you might fix it for a little bit, but then it comes back. So what you're looking for is like, you know, and we kind of already know this, like, you know, when your toddler's not sleeping great and you're like, I know they need a run in the afternoon. It's not rocket science. And so you like kind of forget about specific bedtimes or specific dinner times, and you're like, let's just go for a walk. And in some ways you're like, here, universe, help me out now. I've surrendered. I know we all need more sleep. Maybe I just need to go to bed an hour earlier and the toddler isn't the problem. And you realize that on the walk while you stop fixating on bedtime. Yeah. You know? So it's, you know, there's so many cases of this. You know, I had one of my kids really struggled with reading. If you follow me on the gram, you'd be able to work out who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to say her name on YouTube. But anyway, she is a super physical kid, like pretty much came out walking upside down and doing the splits. Okay. So super physical, and it would make sense that words are just in that way. Never had any language problems, never had any language delays or anything, but just wasn't able to sit still for long enough to read a book. And I was fixated trying to fix that because I do homeschool my kids. So I feel some level of responsibility for them to be able to do things, which is actually kind of a lie because I haven't really taught them anything. Eventually, when I leave things alone, they all work out. Anyway, I had a baby like 3 years ago and stopped hyperfixating on the reading. And guess what happened? Me and my chins got fully supported by the universe. And one day, like legitimately, like she knew her alphabet, but like, dear God, I couldn't even get her to do sight words, man. Like truly. It was like, so grindy. Legit, like one day I just walk into her bedroom at night and she's reading a goddamn novel. And I was like, what are you doing? And she was like, reading. So it's your job in parenting, right? Your job is to hold the face, hold a good face. Yeah, that helps. Hold the faith and provide the resources that you have available to you. Okay, because everyone's resource availability is different. This is why we outsource, because we think we don't have the resources, but you actually have way more than what you think you do. That's just, you know, we could go on and on about resources forever, but you don't need as many as you think you do. I do need some more coffee. So if you want your kids to read, you'd have to provide books. You'd have to provide a level of faith that you know that they'll be able to teach themselves to read eventually. And you'd have to provide time for them to actually even I think reading requires vast time frames, it's almost like watching a rubber band, like just like hours of just like pottering and then picking up books and putting them down and picking up books and putting them down and like spinning around that. Sleep is the same. It requires like vast time frames of like stretchiness, of like, oh, that's working. Like when I work with people now, which is like super limited, like only a handful of people, because I'm super picky in who I work with for sleep, because some of it can become really unhealthy otherwise for some people. And I'm like, maybe bedtime needs to be a different time, or maybe we need to do it this way. And we're going to wait like 2 to 4 weeks before we change anything else. If you want to work with me, you need vast amounts of time to shift and change things. Because when I worked as a sleep consultant, people were like, oh, I did this last night and it didn't fucking work. Like, It's like going, I went and trained to be a marathon runner for the first time this morning and expected to come out a marathon runner. No, but I'm going to hold the faith and know that I am very quickly going to turn into a marathon runner. So I'm going to run every day and I'm going to fully support myself to become that. And in 2 to 4 weeks, you will see a vast difference in how much you can run. And so imagine the difference you'll see in a year. And it's the same with any of our things that we're desiring for our kids. Is when it's so sticky and when it won't work, stretch the time, let it in. It works, promise.